Welcome to Leadership In, the podcast that explores how real leaders make big decisions, navigate pivotal moments, and drive growth by bringing people with them. I'm Jeff Wallenett.
And I'm Greg McDonald. Today's guest is Nolan Johnson, someone who's been building media partnerships since long before it was cool to do it in grocery stores. Nolan is SVP of Media Partnerships at Grocery TV, where he's helping national brands connect with household decision makers at the moment it matters, in store. If you've seen a screen in a grocery aisle, there's a good chance Nolan and his team had something to do with it. At a time when many companies are cutting back, Grocery TV is growing fast, transforming grocery stores into high-impact ad platforms. With over 35,000 screens across 6,500 plus stores, they help brands and retailers reach 96 million shoppers a month, right where purchase decisions happen. Nolan joined as the company's first salesperson and helped it scale from a scrappy startup to a national network trusted by the world's biggest advertisers. Whether he's closing Fortune 500 deals or building partnerships that lift sales and brand equity, Nolan's focus has always been the same: delivering value where it counts. Nolan, welcome to Leadership In. We're thrilled to have you.
That was quite the introduction. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Amazing. We're really glad you're here. So let's start with what you do. So how do you introduce yourself at a dinner party?
For the context of this, I'm SVP of Partnerships over at Grocery TV. We're an in-store video network. The name thankfully speaks right for itself. We put TV displays, digital displays inside of grocery stores, and we partner with brands across the spectrum of industries and categories to help them make an impact in store.
Amazing. And then when you think about how you got into the industry, who opened the first door for you? Like, how'd you get in, and what do you think they may have seen in you that you may not have seen in yourself?
There's really a couple people that come to mind when I think about that. I've been super fortunate to have people that have been willing to open the doors for me across really my entire career. We had a president at one of the first companies I worked for who we had acquired a startup at that time, and I was really interested in the startup entrepreneurial space. And so when that happened, I came and approached him because we were working on a few projects together and asked if I could be a part of this integration of this company that we just acquired. And he put me on that right away without question and said, yeah, just go in, follow this person, and just sit in the meeting rooms, listen to what they do. And was sitting in the meeting rooms with the CEOs, co-founders who'd just been acquired for $80 million, $90 million. And just hearing about how they're talking about the business, how the future of that operates was really what kicked off my passion point for startups and that whole space. And then really the CEO of my current company, Marlo Nickel, took a huge chance on me. I had zero experience in sales, and he was telling me about the company and said, do you know anybody that could be a good salesperson for us? And I said, yeah, me. And literally pitched him on why he should hire me, even though I had zero sales experience. He took a huge chance on me, and fortunately it's paying off.
You're hitting on a big thing, actually, that I talk about a lot when I think about people who lead, which is both of those stories share one thing, which is that you saw something you were interested in, you raised your hand.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that drive in terms of how it informs your decision-making and how you lead.
Yeah, completely. I have to actually thank my dad for that lesson because as a kid, he used to always tell me, if you don't volunteer to do something that you want to do, then you're probably not going to do it, right? A closed mouth doesn't get fed is what he would always say. My parents were always really big into, if you see something that you want to do and you're interested in that, you should ask to do it or ask for that thing, and you never know what might happen, right? The answer is no unless you ask. And that is something that has always resonated with me. It's something that I always tell other people on our teams that, like, hey, if there's something that's interesting out there, go and do that. People that are like college students that I mentor, for example, that's always something I ask, especially because there's a sweet spot early in your career that you really have people that will want to help you. You know what I mean? And we've all been in that point early in our career where we don't really know what we're doing, but we think we do, and we're trying to figure it out. And I think having those kind of people that will say, hey, you're interested in this, come on with me, I'll show you how it's done. I think it's really great.
Yeah, and especially early in your career, that's really critical because you don't know what you want to do. You don't know what opportunities are out there. So saying yes and looking for them and asking for them is pretty important to opening doors that you may not even know exist.
Completely. And you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
You learn so much by even just asking. And odds are that someone is going to try to help you, especially at that stage. There are very few times that I think they're going to say, no, absolutely not.
Right. That carries on beyond, but I think very early in your career, that's the right place to start the habit for sure.
Completely.
What's a piece of advice that you got early in your career that turned out to be either wildly wrong or surprisingly right?
I was told early on that you should not focus on the things you're not very good at and double down on the things that you're really good at. And I had so much resistance to that because I had always had this idea of I want to be a really well-rounded person that is an expert in all these different things. And it's insane how right that was, because at the end of the day, you can't be an expert at everything, right? You have to be selective on what it is. And what I've found is like when you're really good at something, for a lot of cases, it tends to be also what you're most interested in, because you're willing to go that extra mile. You're willing to dive in a little bit, get a little bit more curious about it. And so doubling down on things that I am good at has been wildly more successful than back when I was trying to like get really good at like being an Excel wizard and spreadsheets and everything like that. And that's a very small portion of my job at this point. And so focusing on like those core skills that I did think I was good at, which was talking to people, client partnerships, brand partnerships, things like that, really worked out.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, ultimately you get yourself in positions where when you're in leadership, if you have deficiencies or things you're not great at, you can fill those gaps with people that you trust, people who can then ultimately get into it. But the thing that I always find interesting about this, because I do think it cuts both ways, I'm natively good at a few things, but there are things that really interest me that I'm terrible at.
Sure.
So like the question is, how do you indulge those things while also really finding the right way to pursue the things that you're great at so that you can raise yourself up that way?
Yeah, it's a really good question. For me, I think it's just being realistic with yourself about how good you really are going to get at this thing, right? I think as I get older, especially, I'm learning more and more about where I'll end up when it comes to like how good I want to be at this thing. And so if I can just get dangerously enough to know about it, I find that's like a good, barometer to where you're at.
Yeah, it's something that's great in your professional life to be able to do it that way. In your personal life, it's one of those things where like, how can I just pretend I know how to play guitar?
Right.
Kind of things. Or how am I indulging passions that I'm definitely not good at?
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So let's pivot a little bit to Grocery TV itself. Talk about the company and how the company leads in the space. And obviously I don't just mean television's grocery stores when I talk about it. I'm talking about like how you guys lead in the digital out of home space.
Yeah.
Are there product differentiations? What about the people that work there? Things like that.
Yeah. Oh man. I'll start with the company, and I want to touch on the people because the people are just incredible. And we would be nowhere near where we are today if it wasn't for having just an incredible team at our company. But yeah, Grocery TV, I think one thing that really makes us powerful is that you're seeing in the advertising ecosystem this thing called retail media, which is really, really big. And if you're unfamiliar with retail media, every major retailer nowadays is a media company, right? They're using that customer data to target ads online, et cetera. The funny thing about groceries is that 85% of groceries are still bought in the physical store. Mm-hmm. And so while you have all of this retail media being online or advertisers spending all this money online, the vast majority of shoppers still prefer to shop in store. And that data is holding consistent year over year. So it's pretty interesting. So for us, where we really are a leader in that space is that we can meet these consumers right where they are, right where they shop. If you're a CPG brand, we can make sure that we're hitting that consumer right when they're about to shop, right when they're about to purchase a product. But what's interesting is that the same people that purchase those products tend to purchase products across their entire household. They're the same people that choose which TV they put on their wall. They're the same people that choose which insurance company they are. They're the same people that choose which credit card they're going to use when they're at the checkout lane of that grocery store.
So they are the financial decision makers across the board in their house.
Exactly. And that is a very powerful audience for a lot of advertisers, as you can imagine. And so what's funny is that a huge portion of our advertisers are non-endemic to the store. So you think that they would be your beverage brands or your food brands that are throughout the store that are always the most popular. And some months they are, some months they're not. And you have a telecom brand that's trying to get in front of the right person with a deal on a phone, right? So that really differentiates us in the digital out-of-home world because we have this unique audience set that is really across the country. And scale is the second part of that because we're in all 50 states, like 207 DMAs out of the 214 that exist. And it's pretty interesting. Yeah.
It's like Juneau, Alaska.
And yes, actually, we are in Juneau, Alaska. Yeah.
Do you have to convince the non-endemic advertisers that you've got, I presume we're talking about moms here, and chief household officer, decision maker?
That's good. Yeah, so yes.
I love that.
Abound.
I love that.
Yeah.
I see you've met my wife as well. Yeah. That's the case. It's interesting because some brands, yes, like some brands are like, like what's the connection there? And once you explain it, they get it. But more and more brands are looking for scale. They're looking for reach, more importantly. The advertising ecosystem is changing a ton right now, and it's going to be interesting to see what AI is going to do to that as well, especially in the online world. And because we're on a podcast, I have to say AI at least once.
At least once. That's the rule.
But
You said that on the way in.
that's perfect. Yeah. I think for the non-endemic, it takes a little bit of time. CPG is actually more interesting though, because they are typically working with budgeted silos, because so many CPG brands, especially the large holding houses of all of the CPG conglomerates, have been around for 100 plus years, and they have a way that they buy media, they have a way they buy advertising. And so it's convincing them that while in-store media is a little bit different, it's also similar to a lot of the channels they're already buying. And so there's just a lot of nuanced conversation when it comes to channel allocation, budget allocation, as I'm sure you two have been accustomed to as well.
Is it about the channel? Is it about the measurement? What's holding them back?
I was going to ask a similar question.
Yeah.
Tied more to attribution
Okay.
than even measurement. Yeah. How does that stuff play in to decision making?
So I'd say the biggest challenge is just truly just what channel is this, right? We're at the intersection of so many different types of media. We're at the intersection of retail media. We're at the intersection of out of home, because it's technically not in the home. We're at the intersection of programmatic video, because you can buy us through programmatic networks or programmatic DSPs. And so you have all these channels coming together into one section. And so then there's a lot of questions from marketers going, what budget do I put you in to fit in this bucket in there? And for brands that are really, really siloed and really rigid in how they buy, that can actually be a larger challenge than you think it would be. And so for us, it's just been navigating that. And as in-store media has become a lot more popular, as our network has grown a ton, a lot of brands are just like, we got to figure this out. So we're willing to get rid of this rigidity to figure it out. From a measurement perspective, to answer your question on that front, we're able to measure all of our campaigns. So we do a lot of brand lift measurement, especially for brands that are non-endemic to the store, and for sales lift and things like that. We can do that because we're exactly in those stores. So it's really easy for us to get targeted cells and test cells versus control cells when it comes to testing, to actually understand the incremental impact that grocery TV makes compared to other channels.
This part is a little fascinating, actually. Is it that you know that the consumer was in the store because you know that they transacted in the store, and then if they go and say, buy T-Mobile phones, you tie those two things together? The ad showed at the time that the consumer transacted within a certain reasonable amount of time and then went and bought phones? Like, is that how it works, roughly?
Yeah, roughly, yes. You can understand like what kind of consumers are going in there, and then you can track whether they go to a certain location, for example. So to go in your case, if you're a cellular provider and you want to track how many people go to your location, and then you can make an assumption about how many actually convert there. For CPG, it's super easy because all the products are sold in store. So it's really easy to get clean testing controls and understand, okay, across all of this sample size, who is converting and who is not. And almost every single case study we have proves out that grocery TV makes a very significant impact for in-store CPG sales, as well as brand lift for non-endemic brands.
Right. Yep, that definitely makes sense. So you've seen the company grow in terms of a product and distribution and sales, obviously.
Yeah.
But in terms of people, can you talk a little bit about how the company leads with the people, how the company's thought about hiring? Who do you hire? How do you sequence that? How do you make sure that the people are a key part of your leadership equation?
I will say one thing about our company is that people have always been a priority since the moment I started. And it's the reason that I've been there for coming up on 7 years now. They take very, very good care of their people, which I really love. Ironically enough, when we first started, nobody had experience in the advertising world. So it was a bunch of people that really came together. They were technology first people. I came in and it was literally silent, people with headphones on, clacking on the keyboards. And my first thought was like, oh no, what did I do? Because I just joined this company. And I'm like, hey, how's it going, everybody? And everyone's like, please don't talk to me.
I pitched so hard to be here.
And meanwhile, Marlo, our CEO, was stoked because he's like, we need more energy in this place. We need people that are going to talk. And all of these people, of course, are like dear friends of mine now because we've been through it all together. But the people that we really focus on hiring are, number one, just making sure we have the right people. Especially, that's like the biggest lesson I've learned. I made mistakes of not getting the right people in the right spots sometimes. It just happens. But especially at a small company, you have to be so selective on who you hire because you don't have the affordability of, number one, just capital usually, and number two, time to be able to onboard a lot of the wrong people. That's been really, really important, is narrowing down who we want to hire. Getting back to your question, though, I think our company really focuses on people that are entrepreneurial in nature. A lot of people we hire are probably going to be founders one day themselves. They have this ability to work in a gray space when things are not black and white and be able to achieve outcomes. And then the other part of it is just people that are really hardworking and people that are just good human beings. I can genuinely say I like every single person I work with at the company. And that is something that I'm so lucky to be able to say. And honestly, it's rare that you can say that.
Very rare. People pay a lot of lip service to culture. They talk about being employee first, and then when the rubber meets the road, the first people to go are the people, right? Cost cutting.
Yeah.
But the idea that you're bringing people in who not only contribute to the culture, but are valuable parts of what you're trying to do, that are invested in the business, those are the types of people that you want to pay. And it's interesting, you talked a lot about people who get shit done. So there's a big question that we ask a lot here, which is the notion of being agile versus having to make grown-up decisions about what to focus on and what not to focus on. You want to be as agile as is humanly possible,
Yep.
but you can't chase every ball of yarn down every hallway.
Yeah.
So how do you start to weigh those decisions against each other?
The best example we have of this is that we used to have a portion of our business that was AI analytics for in-store, and this was 2019, 2018. And we chased it, got a couple big contracts from it, and in reality, we realized that we're getting really distracted from our core business, which was advertising. And so we eventually decided to make the hard decision to shut that down. Credit to our co-founders who made that tough decision because it was bringing in revenue, but ultimately wasn't as profitable as we needed it to be. And so I think that the number one thing is really just focusing on your North Star. Where do you want to be as an organization? And then making sure that you're looking across all the different activities that you're doing, all the different balls that you're chasing to understand, is this really getting us to where we want to be? Or is it something that for whatever reason feels really good right now in the moment, but isn't really getting us to where we see the future of the business going?
Effectively, does the behavior fit the values?
Is it helping us get to where we want to go? And are we super clear on where we're trying to get to too?
Yeah, completely.
You guys are clearly a category leader in your space. You gave a bunch of examples of that earlier, but does that come with responsibilities or pressures that you wrestle with?
Yeah, one of the tough things that we're doing is we're really building a market from scratch. There's not a lot of in-store media out there that had been done before us. There's a couple examples, but never really got to the scale that we're now hitting. Our brand partners are looking at us to do this the right way. And if we want the category and the market to grow, we have to do this the correct way, right? So there's a lot of pressure to make sure we get it right. And then there's a lot of pressure also to make sure that our brand equity is living up to what it is right now, which is that you're a forward-thinking brand, you're innovating.
You touched on the retailers a couple of times. They may be advertisers in and of themselves, but you're really teaching them about advertising in so many ways.
Yeah, completely. Our retailers are super eager to learn about this business, right? They're seeing what the likes of Walmart is doing in this space and making billions of dollars from this advertising business. Our job is to be those subject matter experts that we can teach them about advertising, but also why they hire us as a partner to be able to do that, because we can focus on the ad agencies and these broader media programs and be very successful in a sales force for them, because obviously they benefit from that when it comes to in-store.
You mentioned innovation, which I think is really interesting, because a lot of times companies that operate in positions of leadership in a space tend to be more risk averse as they grow and capture more volume. So I think the big question is, how do you guys continue to drive and push for innovation while fighting this urge to maintain the status quo, which is working, by the way. The one thing you mentioned earlier is the AI product, right?
Yeah.
That was innovation that you decided to cut at the cost of it just not being profitable enough, which is a totally reasonable business decision to make. But it's a mark of innovation. And so how do you continue to innovate like that and fight that notion of maintaining status quo?
I think it's because while we are a leader in the in-store space, we're not a leader in the advertising space. And we really take that kind of mentality seriously. We're in this market of in-store media, and sure, we are the leader in that right now. But we're not satisfied with that. We're not satisfied until we're a line item on brands' budgets every year when they go to buy advertising, along with the NBCs of the world and the TVs of the world and Facebook and everything like that. There should be a line item for grocery TV, especially if you're a CPG brand, because of how much scale we have with your audience set. This kind of challenger mentality is constantly in organization. We're never satisfied with where we're at because we've never truly felt like we've hit that top. That's been really, really big for us because it's always constantly motivating our team to be, hey, how can we be innovative? How can we be inventive? How can we make sure that we are showing up in the marketplace with new ideas to get brands on board? And that's really helped us.
That's a great answer. And I'm curious to know, because you said it, so I'm just throwing it back at you here, which is being a line item on a plan.
Yeah.
How far off do you think we are from people looking at the landscape and going, I gotta buy these apps on CTV, I have to be in this native space, but I also have to be in this digital out-of-home space?
I think it's already happening. It's just about the percentage of budget allocation that goes to something like digital out-of-home.
Got it.
And I think that the more specific you get with to be self-serving in-store media, but also all these other networks that are popping up that provide scale. It's getting better. That being said, I think that a lot of marketers get scared of digital out-of-home because of the reputation that it's had. It's previously had this reputation of being unmeasurable. It's previously had this reputation of being unreliable and antiquated, candidly. It's literally the oldest form of advertising. And so we have a lot of responsibility as an industry to make sure that brands are getting more comfortable with that and that we can prove measurable actual results for them. And once we do that, then we'll get the actual brand investment to continue on board.
This question just popped into my head.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Who do you consider your actual competitive set? Do you consider gas station TV, bowling center TV, Atmosphere, Chive, like other out-of-home providers as your competitive set? Or do you really look at it as being bigger than that, as like basically anywhere you can watch a video, that's my competitive set?
Yeah, I think the broader version of that, all those people you mentioned, could they be considered competitors? Sure. What's interesting is that you find that a lot of the times we're on the same plans.
Of course.
It's just different allocation, which I think is kind of beautiful about our industry, right? Is that you can get in so many different places. There's not a lot of digital out-of-home operators that are very similar. A lot of times they're very, very unique in the audience and perspective that they can bring, the venue that they bring. However, for us, we're always fighting against the, hey, your XYZ brand, you're spending $80 million a year on Facebook. Is that really increasing sales inside of grocery stores? Because we know that we can do that for you. And so for us, like in the long term, certainly it's that broader ecosystem that we're going after.
I had somebody talk to me last week. We were talking about what makes a competitor, and he's like, it's competing for the same line item of budget. It doesn't matter what service we're delivering. If we're competing for that same line item of budget, they're a competitor.
Any dollars.
Completely.
Yeah.
So the answer is everyone you just mentioned.
Literally everyone.
and more. Yeah, that's
that
right.
perfume insert on a magazine.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. We're very obviously selective on who we think we have a right to win versus them at every moment, which obviously is not going to be every single advertising company.
Totally.
Yeah. What's something that people outside of the company don't understand about the complexity of leading at this level? So whether you're talking about sort of leaders in general or people in advertising but not in your company, what are things that occupy your day that other people maybe aren't thinking about?
It's a great question. I think what a lot of people don't think about, because the advertising industry is so well established, right? It runs pretty much everything. I always love the saying, if you let any company live long enough, it'll become an advertising company. And what we're doing, though, is we are creating our own market. And I mentioned that before. And I think that is one of the hardest challenges, where it would be so different if you're a social media company that gets even decently established. You already have set budgets that you're going after that people will be probably willing to give you because you're something new in that space. For us, because we're so unique, there is so much of our time spent just on educating people what the value of our entire market is, let alone our product, right? So the thing that I spend a lot of my time thinking about, Greg, is that I need to get people on board to even care about our category and our market, and then I can get people to care about grocery TV and what we do. And so sometimes that vehicle is a little bit more linear, and sometimes it's step by step by step by step to get them to even be open to buying someone like us. So I think from like a company perspective, that's something that takes a lot of time that I don't think everybody has a full appreciation for. And then from just an internal company perspective, it's just a lot of time educating the rest of my team about our marketplace and what we do. As someone who's been on the front of lines from literally the beginning, I know a lot more customer feedback, and it really is my responsibility and the responsibility of others on our team to make sure that we're educating our internal teams on what buyers really want and how to innovate the product in a way that's going to make a lot of sense. Those two things take a ton of my time thinking about.
Yeah, really interesting you're talking about. I'm putting words in your mouth here a little bit, but like winning the first dollar, where when you're an established company, you've got some business that's funding what you're doing, and then your emerging businesses still have to earn their place, but you're still winning that first dollar across the board. And then that voice of the customer piece too is just such an important thing in terms of how do we prioritize within the organization? What products do we build next? What products do we build at all? How do we think about and get our teams motivated around this?
One thing I actually want to build on with that is that one of the hardest things about scaling a startup is making sure that information that you're getting on the front lines is actually making it to the appropriate teams and the appropriate people. Because in nature, it sounds so easy, like such an easy problem to solve. But as you add layers, that you're playing a game of telephone eventually, right? And so especially when you're a new market, a new product in market, that kind of information passing becomes so critical and so important. And honestly, like it's something that we've messed up a ton, and it's something that we've gotten right a ton now. But that dissemination of information is so incredibly important, especially from the front lines.
And it's a reflection of culture too.
Completely.
Because there are companies that I've seen where somebody will say, I was with a customer, and everybody stops what they're doing and starts writing down whatever that person said about what the customer's feedback was. And then you decide whether or not you act on it. But valuing what the customer said, how they thought about it, and that somebody who was with a customer is bringing a valuable point of view that is really potentially critical or even existential in some cases to the future of the business is really important. And I think an important layer of culture that people don't always think about.
Yeah, completely. I used to have product people message me and say, hey, how'd that meeting with so-and-so client go? And that always really made me happy because they're looking for that raw, unfiltered feedback.
Come with me next time.
That's right. Yeah. That would have been the better answer.
It's funny. It's like that old product development cartoon, what the customer asked for, and it's a treehouse, and then it goes through a bunch of what sales asked for, and then at the end, it's like what product built, and it's a tire swing.
Oh yeah, of course.
So it's that gigantic game of telephone through however many sets of people. When you look at and think about personal leadership, what do you think the biggest gaps are?
I think a lot of leaders think that they have to always have an answer. And I think that is such a big gap out there. Our company has very much a culture of being not afraid to say, I don't know, which I think is amazing. But I see it all the time where you see people just completely coming up with answers that don't make any sense. And it's okay to say, I don't know. I think that that's actually a sign of someone who's probably really intelligent, who's not afraid to say, I don't know the answer to that. So I think for leaders, it's super, super important to admit that when you don't know and then go find answers and build upon that. It also opens up discourse and dialogue. If you say, I don't know, then someone might say, okay, this is my perspective on it, as opposed to everyone looks to the end of the boardroom table and that person has to have the final say in everything. I think that's a dangerous spot to be in for leadership.
That's a great answer. I also think it shows vulnerability and humanity that you don't often get. And I think that ultimately breeds connection and a desire for people to follow that leadership. That's a really, really good answer.
Yeah.
We used to have a company value at freedom to fail. And that idea was, hey, it's okay to take calculated, educated risks on things. And if it doesn't work, don't be afraid to call it. More importantly, call it fast when you can. And then let's do a postmortem on it. Let's figure out what went wrong and learn from that and build on that. I've worked for companies that you messed up one time on something, no matter how large or small it was, and you were gone. As an executive, at least, that was the case. And so I think it's super important to have an innovative culture. You got to be willing to take risks, and you got to be willing to be wrong sometimes.
What do you think the role of leadership is in making that successful? I completely agree with what you said, but celebrating the failures or celebrating the things that didn't go the way you expected is a lot harder for most people to do. Have you seen anything that works really well there in terms of actually walking that talk?
Being the first person to admit that you messed something up. I mean, really though, if you want to institute the culture, like you have to be the first one as a leader. You have to, you have to be the one to say, hey, I really messed this up. This is where I thought I was going and where this was right, but I was missing this critical piece of information, or I was wrong on that. Our CEO is incredible at this, to not be afraid if something went wrong, and then just own it and just let's talk about it and figure that out.
Yeah, that makes sense. What is something that you are still learning or unlearning today?
I feel like I'm always learning. That's such a cop-out answer, but the need to be liked is something that I think as a leader especially, you have to manage and get under control. And it's something that as an early leader especially, I really struggled with. And it led to quite a few things not going the way that I wanted to, because I was so worried about what people thought of me, or so worried about being the most liked person in the room at any time. And in reality, you just got to stick to principles and be willing to act on those principles and be willing to stand by them. And it's something that I still have not perfected yet, but I've certainly got a lot better by saying, okay, if I know something is true, I'm not afraid to just speak the truth. And if someone doesn't like that, then that's on them.
Well, people can get a measure of consistency from you that way, which
100%.
is really good. Casey Stengel once said, the key to being a good manager is keeping the people who hate me away from the people who are undecided, which I don't think is a great way to manage, but it is hilarious. We always ask a question about legacy, which I think is really interesting. Yeah. You're a pretty young guy still. I would venture to say you're younger than I am. Like when you start to think about what your career looks like 25 or 30 years from now, I don't know how long you're planning on working. I got another 5 in me at best. What do you want your legacy to be?
That's such a good question. I think for me, what I would want is I would want someone to be able to say, this person was someone who led with courage, even when it was hard, someone that treated people really, really well, and someone that I could learn from. That's what I want people to say about me, because I've had so many just fantastic teachers in my life that have brought me up with them, mentors in my life that have done that. And if I could even pass on a fraction of the amount of mentorship that I've had, that would make me feel really successful.
paying it forward. I love that.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
That was the more concise way to say it.
Yeah,
I think that's a great place to leave it.
I agree.
Nolan, this was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, for your candor, and for your insights on leadership.
Yeah.
And looking forward to seeing more of what you and Grocery TV are up to next.
Leadership In is hosted and produced by Jeff Wallenitz and Greg McDonald. This episode was recorded at Podstream Studios in New York City. Special thanks to the amazing studio team and to Jess DeWeese for production support. Please follow the show on your favorite podcast app. If you have questions or know someone who'd make a great guest, we'd love to hear from you at leadershipinpodcast@gmail.com.